So September 11th, and the meeting of NID is now open. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chris, roll call, please.
Here. Excuse me.
Here.
Here. Here. Okay, before public comment, I'd like to just take a moment to reflect on 9/11, what happened 23 years ago. So just have a moment of silence. Thank you. So now it's time for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Any public comment on items not on the agenda? Don't see any. So that is, public comment is closed. We'll go to the consent agenda. We have a motion.
Mr. President, I move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that. Excuse me.
Any comments from directors? No? Public comment? Okay, roll call, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes. So we're going to a workshop item. Brandon is back with us from PG&E. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Johansson, directors. Once again, Brandon Sanders, Sierra Division Government Affairs, PG&E. Going to have a pretty brief update for you all this morning. One thing I do want to point out, I was thinking about it on my way up here from my home in Auburn. We're, 6 months or better into this work to, restore service and return water to the conveyances coming out of Spalding. And I'd like to point out that we've done all that work despite its complexity and the hazardous nature of it with 0 safety incidents. So we're really proud of that. That is always something that we strive for, and I know that you all do too, as a utility operator. The primary update is, is that the work to reconstruct the damaged sections of the South Yuba pipe is complete. We've released our lockout tagout procedures, and that is essentially ready to convey water. Of course, the ongoing work at Spalding 2 is not allowing us to put water into the pipe at this point, but we still are diverting out of the Drum Canal into South Yuba Canal at the diversion point downstream. I believe we're still flowing about 450 into the Drum Canal with, I believe, about 65 spilling over into the South Yuba. So there is water moving. But we're ready to start pushing water through the South Yuba pipe once planning is completed and the work is done as far as the repairs to spot 2. So that's really the bulk of the update. We continue to meet, or but our operational team continues to meet at regular intervals with your team. My understanding is that those conversations are going well, and there's a lot of good coordination and collaboration happening. And at this point, we're still working on a variety of items that the board has requested as far as some reporting and timelines and schedules and things like that. Those are all still in development and working in partnership, of course, with your team. So I expect that we'll have a better picture on the horizon of what we're looking at for over the winter in terms of additional work to bring the full suite of assets up there back into service. But that work is ongoing, and we're going to, again, continue to attend these meetings as we've committed to previously. And I don't know that there really have much beyond that, but the work is progressing safely. Happy to answer any questions, or if there's feedback I can carry back to the team for review and response for the next meeting, I'm happy to do that.
I have a question, Brandon.
Please.
Mr. President, may I go forward? Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. So you talked about the repairs are ongoing for Spalding 2. What is your timeline that you gave us, or someone gave us, I forgot, it wasn't you last time that was here. Is that still holding? Is it gone longer? Is it shorter? I'm hoping it'll be shorter. What can you say about that?
I believe the actual schedule is development. I don't know that that's been finalized yet. I do know that they're continuing to assess what needs to be done to, complete repairs to the unit. I do know that, I think that some of the parts or equipment are, in place or available now, so, I think there's still some inspections and, I guess I would say assessment of the extent of damage, and then once that's final, we'll have a better picture of the timeline, but that would be something that would be shared with your operations folks in those coordination meetings. I don't believe that anything has really changed since Seth
Okay.
was here last time, so, it's pretty, I hate using the word status quo because it's not a status quo situation, but, I don't believe there's been much change other than South Yuba pipe being released.
And then, I heard what you said earlier, but I just want to clarify for my own understanding. Did you say that the work on the South Yuba pipe is complete?
Yes.
It is. So you don't have any further work, no more welds, no more
I
anything?
think
to be
that
doing?
there is, I think there's a little bit of work on some of the scaffold and the catwalks. They're making some enhancements.
On the exterior?
Yeah, but it doesn't relate to the pipe.
The flow.
More like accessibility for inspections, maintenance crews and things. But yeah, the work is totally complete and pretty incredible to see with the heavy lift helicopter and all that. So,
We have seen some pictures. And then are you any closer to understanding what the root cause of this was and releasing that information to NID and the public?
I asked that question in our meeting yesterday with the operations folks, and it's still in development. So I don't really have anything to share beyond that. I would imagine that, under our coordinated operating agreement, that there will be, further conversations around that once the review is final. But that would be a question I would need to lean on Power Gen leadership and your team. That's the venue through which it would be conveyed to.
Okay, thank you. That's all. I have.
Chris?
No questions. I was happy to see the picture in the paper of the pipe.
Mhm.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, to think how they built it in the early 1900s is kind of
How they
mind-boggling.
got it up there.
How they got it up there.
Without the helicopter?
Yeah. So for the 25th, I believe is the next meeting. I do have a park fire recovery meeting with Butte County that morning, so it might not be me coming on the 25th, but we'll be sure to send something.
This is a workshop. Anybody can chime in at any time. Any questions? Michael?
Michael Taylor. I do have a question. I know this has kind of come up with you guys in the past in talking about this. It seems, I'm not completely familiar with the project at all. However, I have been here a few times and have been listening. It seems to me that there is a maintenance issue with valves and turbines. And does it, at this point, does it make sense to require that PG&E every 2 years pulls out that turbine, pulls out that valve, and puts in the replacement valve and turbine, and then do the inspection that they need to do, so that every 3 years or 5 years there's a rotation, not having to look for a part or to look for one down the road, always have a backup and then to rotate them. Does that make sense for something like that down the road?
Go ahead, Jen.
Go
Jen,
ahead,
you
Jen.
know how to answer this. I don't.
It's a good idea and a good thought, but unfortunately with how powerhouses are, these, all the issues have been with very unique parts that weren't necessarily, you just take them in and out every 2 years, like replacing a whole turbine every 2 years would.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning replace it. I was meaning take it out, service it, but having backup one in place to put the backup one in while that was being serviced, to be rotated in like 5 years later.
Yeah, those powerhouses, we don't operate their powerhouses, but that's not really how they function. There are backup parts to the extent that they are, smaller components that would often break, but kind of having a second set of every part for a powerhouse, I don't think would be feasible.
It just seems unreasonable, but both powerhouses are completely down and they both have very similar problems.
They're very different problems.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, very different problems. So
Right.
the powerhouse issues, powerhouse one, it was essentially a PRV issue that ended up damaging the horns and some columns, and then this issue is separate. So, yeah,
All right.
they're different issues.
I thank you. Thank you very much.
I don't see any other questions. I have a question for you, Brandon. How much of these parts are part of the global supply chain? How much are made locally in the United States, and how much you have to reach out to other countries to get those parts?
That is a tough question for me to answer, not being a technical expert. I do believe that a lot of it involves machining work. So versus replacing something entirely, it takes precision machining for like the bearings and things like that, I believe. I can ask. I would imagine that most of it is sourced with domestic suppliers, I would think. I know like a lot of our electrical equipment, like transformers and things, come from like South Korea and other countries, but I don't have a good answer for you on that, other than to say that a lot of the components are repaired using machining as opposed to don't necessarily replace the entire thing. It's machine work often.
There's a number of geopolitical writers and analysts who are saying that the global supply chain system is on its way out. That we're going to have to resource more locally if we want to have a guaranteed supply.
Well, we as a company have received all kinds of awards and accolades for our supplier diversity. We have a metric that we go up against. My understanding is we definitely work hard to source things domestically as best we can. I do know certain things like the large transformers. I know we have a lot of those coming out of places like South Korea. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things are made to order. You know, you don't have any, you can't just build a substation overnight, right? A lot of that stuff takes a year lead time to construct these transformers that are essentially the size of this room. It's good feedback. I mean, I know that from a supplier diversity standpoint, we're industry leading on that. As far as disabled veteran business enterprises, women-owned businesses, all of that, I don't know exactly what the nature of it is, but I know that we've received a lot of national awards on that.
Well, keep it up.
Brandon, I did have a question. With the repairs at Spalding 1 and even with the South Yuba pipe, it did after some time and many conversations with NID and PG&E that PG&E really elevated their commitment to expediting the repairs. It's not seeming that, and I could be wrong, that the same commitment level to expediting the repairs at Spalding 2 is being put forth by PG&E. How would you respond to that?
I will definitely ask the team where it's at in the level of priority. My understanding is very high priority because in order for us to take the outage on unit 1 to repair the second horn, we need that operational. And my understanding is that is sort of a path in mind of how to achieve both of those. But I think the nature of the work is a little different in spot 2 because it's not so much like a confined space where you have like the 2 welders rotating in and out.
Right.
But I know it's a very high priority for the team and the company and for our leadership. I mean, this has gotten the attention of everyone at the highest points in the company.
Well, if you could please ask to confirm the level of priority, that would be great because we do require it to be expedited or we're going to have just as big water supply issues.
Yeah, I think everyone's very mindful of the urgency. And last I heard that there was parts on order, the disassembly was ongoing, and the assessment plan to make the repair is in progress.
And that's consistent what staff has heard as well. I would also ask, I do understand that there is a draft schedule related to the repair of Spalding 2, but PG&E has been hesitant to share that with us due to the ongoing evaluation of what actually needs to be repaired. Would it be possible to share that draft schedule? Even just having a draft schedule, even though we know that it's going to possibly change, is helpful for our planning efforts, but also helpful for us to gauge progress as it moves forward.
Talking with the team yesterday, in advance of this meeting, my understanding is we're nearing a point in time where we can share that schedule. I don't know if it's going to be in 2 weeks, but
I've been hearing that for about 3 weeks now.
okay, well, I'll carry that back. I mean, it's very important for you guys to have that information so you can make your operational decisions. So certainly mindful of that.
And we are understanding that the schedule's changed, but if we don't ever have a schedule, we're kind of in the dark, and then we don't know when progress isn't being made because we've never seen the schedule.
Yeah, I will reinforce that message back to the team.
And I have a question going back, a little bit fuzzy about what happened in number two. This kind of goes to answer Michael's question, maybe the public. We have a multifaceted outage here for three or four different things going on. You refresh my memory on what, I heard wicket gates once, so I heard in the turbine itself. Is that correct?
Yeah, my understanding is that we completed the repairs to the wicket gates, and then upon startup testing, there was some damage that occurred that resulted in a shutdown of the unit. And then that,
Was that a governor problem?
Yeah, it was a governor and burned up some bearings.
I believe I've heard the word governor.
Okay.
Quite-
So there's two separate things in that unit, and we're talking about supply chain, and these are very specialized parts. The last valve we installed in Rollins came from Germany. I mean, it was like 2 or 3, I mean, I don't know how long it took them to make that thing, but
I believe we either have confirmation of the governor's availability, that particular piece of the puzzle. I don't know exactly where it's at in terms of whether
Okay.
it's on delivery or on order, but my understanding is that we're having conversations with the vendor. I don't know if you have something to add there, Jennifer.
I've,
It sounded like to me that they were unclear as to lead time on that replacement kit. But
Okay.
oftentimes, remember, Spalding 2 is sitting before all this happened. So when valves aren't exercised, they can malfunction.
right.
So when the valve malfunction, it then caused too much water to go through the powerhouse, which burned up the bearings and that damaged the governor.
And so thank you for clarifying, because I think there's two issues here, and I forgot
Right.
about the governor, so thank you.
I believe the vendor's name is KW Emerson.
Yeah, probably.
And that's really all that I have at this point. But my understanding in talking with the team is that the governor is, we either have ordered it or it's on delivery. I'm not entirely clear how that ended up, but that piece of the puzzle is in place.
You know, excuse me for interrupting, but I've been getting messages that the volume of that microphone is too low and they're not able to hear your words.
Bill,
I'll just hold it. How about that? Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay.
That's probably the best. Thank you.
so I have a question I thought I heard last meeting was that if Spalding 2 fix becomes onerous, that you have a bypass possibility?
There is something called a scroll plug. I have no idea what that is, but there is a possibility that we can.
I know what that is.
I've just heard the term. I'm not an engineer, so, but I know that we have the ability to bypass the unit if there comes a need to do that. Is that correct?
Spalding 2?
And we heard that
Yes.
term, the scroll plug at the last meeting, actually. And that's just, the scroll is the part.
Have we heard the final, was the plug finally designed, adopted, or approved?
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, I just can't recall where they were at with the design of the plug.
yeah, we have all options in play right now. And all of that's happening in close coordination with Chip and his team.
How long would it take to set up that bypass?
That I don't know, but I don't think we're talking weeks or months.
Well, I mean, for me, it'd be a couple hours that,
Right. Yeah, right.
I mean, it's just, so you understand the situation. We have to fill Scott's Flat Lake. All right. As a farmer, we're buying seed for next year. And if we don't, that seed may not be available in January, February, March. So people are already putting money out for next year's crops. And we need to know as soon as possible what we're dealing with.
Fully understand. We're building the plan and the schedule. My understanding is as soon as that's at a point in time where it's ready to go, we'll be sharing that with Jennifer and Chip, and that'll help further inform your operational decision-making.
I know you guys went 24/7 on the repair of Powerhouse 1. We're hope that your analysis of Powerhouse 2 is 24/7 also,
Yeah, I think it's
one shift.
a little bit different because it's more sort of driven by the disassembly, the repair of the parts and the reassembly versus like constant welding for weeks. It's just a little bit different in that way. Like there will be a point in time where we're just waiting on the bearings to be machined or for the governor unit to come in.
Okay. questions, audience? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you all. And I don't know that I'll be here on the 25th, but I'll be sure that there's someone here to represent. Thank you.
Let them know our concerns.
Absolutely.
So, 4B, we're gonna have a workshop on the 2025 Capital Improvement Program, CIP budget. Yeah.
Who's on first?
This
on
is,
first?
one of the first big steps of the annual budgeting process. So this is presentation of the proposed capital improvement program for 2025. And if you'll recall, approximately, I don't know, 2.5 years ago now, staff developed a new system by which we analyze and evaluate capital projects within each particular fund for funding prioritization. That it then is based off of a scoring system, and that's essentially how we select the projects that we are moving forward. So we take into account what needs to be done, what we would like to be done, and then the amount of revenues and expenditures we have proposed. I'm not doing the presentation, so no, Doug is. Mr. Roderick is.
Welcome back, Doug.
Doug has, he's a little slow. He's been in Africa. Yeah, he's been in Africa for 3 weeks, so he's still in a different time zone. So, please bear with him.
He's asleep, in other words?
The presentation and the projects that we are showing you are proposed or shown by fund, and that is because those projects
Mhm.
then compete for funding within that fund. So this is the first step in the budgeting process. Next will be the operational fund, and then we'll review the proposed combined budget.
So let me just clarify. So then the amounts that we're looking at here are proposed, right? And we as board can switch them around, or staff, or
You
whatever.
can, yes, if you would like to spend less money. We do a lot of kind of.
I'd like to
full-
spend more money, actually, but I mean, on our infrastructure. I'm gonna be here.
That makes me start sweating, but.
Okay.
So, no, we went through and do an initial culling of the proposed program based off of expected revenues, what we're saving money for, expected expenditures. So we've already kind of done some cuts, and this is also consistent with what we proposed in the 5-year CIP. What was that, maybe 6 months ago? So, but yeah, this presentation is intended to receive input from the board, and we can make modifications, and then we'll make those modifications and then bring it back at a future meeting.
Speaking to Ricky's point, how do we, what's my question? How do we decide how much we can afford each year on capital?
Right, so we go through an analysis of revenues and expenditures. So we look at each fund and look at revenues. We already have an idea of proposed operational expenditures. So what we essentially do is we go through and do an analysis of projected beginning year fund balances, projected ending year fund balances. And then when we start making moves, we start making them where we're seeing certain funds go into the red. With capital expenditures, it is normal to be able to tap into reserves for capital expenditures. For operational expenditures, you really don't want to be spending one-time
Right.
revenues, which any reserves would be considered. You want to be able to live within your means of money you're bringing in for the year. Because we're going into rate setting, any additional reserves that we have can be used to smooth rates over the 5-year rate period, and to fund larger projects. So we do know we have Scotts Flat Spillway coming up, which is going to be extremely expensive, as well as the Chicago Park rewind, which is also really expensive. So what you don't want to do is have these huge giant rate increases, because it impacts the customer too much. And so that's what we start looking at, is we try to, this capital budget was intentionally kept a little bit lower, from the fact that we're moving into rate setting.
Okay, that makes.
You kept this a little lower.
We did keep it a little low, and it also, it's a reflection of that some revenues needed, for example, for the treated water system. You know, we've had a lot of conversations related to collecting enough revenue from treated water customers to more routinely replace treated water lines within taking into consideration a life cycle of each particular treated water line and the system overall. Some of those things we haven't done yet because that's going into the next rate with the rate setting process. So we did intentionally keep it low.
So this keeps us going forward.
Mhm.
As they're still setting the foundation and getting an accounting system in that you can rely on.
It does, and we also, one of the things that I think probably impacts what we propose more, it seems that all agencies naturally have a kind of a certain level of projects that they can actually deliver each year. And when you start, we look back at historical trends on actual project delivery, and you can really see kind of how much work and how much construction can be done in a normal year. And what happens when you propose more than kind of that normal bar of delivery, you have a lot of unspent funds. And so we do take that into account. Sandra and her team did a really good job going back through historical records to really look at, what is our delivery pattern and how has that been looking over the past 10-year period? So we do make adjustments off of that as well.
Going forward for the next 5 years, I know you don't have the numbers, but just off the, are we going to sustain this for the next 5 years, or we'll probably have to increase it a little bit? And how much of this 2025 will go to maybe local contractors, or at least they'll have the ability to bid it?
Yeah, so this is a pretty sustainable amount. This is what I would consider a base capital program. What you're gonna see over the next, 5-year period is some super large projects. So with these smaller, normal level projects, a lot of that is all local contractor work, with the procurement policy that was recently adopted. We do have the qualified bidder list, and most of those folks are all local contractors. When you get into those larger projects like Scotts Flat Spillway, the capacity of the local contractors may not be enough to assist with those projects, but we do look at all opportunities to kind of maybe take off a smaller piece, say, for example, tree clearing, and try to bid that out locally as opposed to a big contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you for that clarification.
Give you enough time, Doug?
Yeah, I'm all up to date.
Good.
Okay. Let's see, is this thing working? That's the first. Oop, there it goes. Did you want to go through this first part, Jennifer, or you want me to?
Yeah, sure, I can. So this is just a summary of the capital budget by fund. As the board recalls, we opened up the capital funds a few years ago, and this allows us to better track capital expenditures within their own fund. They are sub-funds of the parent fund. So for example, Fund 15 is a sub-fund of the parent fund, Fund 10, which is water operations. 55 is hydroelectric capital. That is a sub-fund of the parent fund, Fund 50. And then internal services, Fund 70 is kind of where we house watershed projects or projects that are being done to kind of those administrative facilities such as this building.
Mhm.
The internal services fund, one thing to note is with watershed projects, a lot of them are grant funded. And so you also see us, when you see the operating budget, you also see us booking revenue related to grants. So we offset that required cost allocation. So it's about $13.4 million we're proposing this year. And it is predominant, most of it is in hydro this year, with a little bit less in water capital and a small amount in internal services, which is primarily those watershed projects. The next slide just breaks down by kind of each department. So within each fund, there's a department: engineering, water operations, maintenance, hydro admin, hydro operations, hydro maintenance, watershed, IT, and then engineering. One thing also to note is that engineering is also getting moved over to the Fund 70. It will be cost allocated, but that cost allocation is distributed amongst the funds proportionally based off of the amount of capital projects each fund has going into Fund 70.
Okay, so let's get started. Here is the proposed 2025. This is the Fund 15 capital that we're talking about. And so these are the projects that we're going to be talking about. I'll go through them relatively quickly. If you got specific questions about a project, I'd be happy to answer them. A lot of these are pretty straightforward. So automated head gate, this is one that's a continuing one. We already have the the Rubicon Gate purchased. We just need to do some structural improvements to actually place it, and that'll get done this next year, which is why this number is smaller than some of the other head gates that you see, or gauging stations that you see there. Next one is another gauging station. This is at Cascade Banner, the Cascade Canal. This requires a pretty decent sized structure to be able to be installed there to put this measuring station there. The China Pipe Crossing, this is one that's, the pipes rotted out, is failing. I did not put my finger in it this time, so it's not shooting water out. But it is cracked in a horizontal fashion right in the center line of the pipe and starting to compress. So we're basically putting a same size pipe in the existing location using some of the existing structure. But this is one, ultimately feeds the Smartsville treatment plant as well as that. Correct, Chip? Yeah. So it's important piece. Christian Life Way, as you probably remember, this has bounced around a few times in terms of doing and not doing. Caltrans will be widening Highway 49 this next year, so we have to do some improvements to some of this because of that, which is why that's sitting in there now. We have to have this done next year because, like I said, Caltrans will be widening Highway 49.
Hey Doug, on that point, do they, when they widen the road and the pipe is there, do they pay to have it moved, or do we move it, or
It depends on
how does that work?
Who was there first?
if we were
Who was
there
there
first
first?
or not, yeah.
The pipe was there first.
It depends on if we were there first or not, and I do not believe that's the case on this one. So they are gonna get us some
But you
additional
worked that
right
out
away.
with Caltrans.
Next one is the DS Canals. This one is the second. Last year we had the first one, which was at the Banner Trail crossing. This is the one at Red Dog. As we ran water heavy through the DS Canal this year, this one was actually a submerged culvert. It was still functioning, but it was submerged, as well as being a shotgun culvert they plug up because they're smaller. So we'll get this fixed and we'll have no flow restrictions in this, at least in this particular portion of the DS Canal, should we need to do that. Hopefully never again do that, that flow requirements. East Ridge PRV, again, is this, we've got a lot of PRV stations that are old, underground, and so need to update them and bring them above ground. And so there's a couple of them we're gonna try to do each year as we go through our inventory of PRV stations. Like
Reducing valve.
Right.
most of our infrastructure with this, as well as our pipes, a lot of them were all installed about the same time. So they're all coming of age and past age, of course. So this is just part of our systematic replacement of these things. So we prioritize the highest ones and start with those. Lake Wildwood treatment plant, this is the chem tanks. Basically, this is adding a second tank for chlorine and for the caustic. We do that with most all our treatment plants, which is basically just extending the pad out and installing these tanks, along with the plumbing, et cetera. This really doesn't impact, this needs to be done regardless and doesn't impact the overall design of the new treatment plant that we'll also be doing forward. So it's indifferent of what we decide to do moving forward that way. So these still need to be done.
So
Yeah.
right now, we're scheduled for what, 2026, 2027 to spend about 9.5 million.
The treatment plant.
Treatment plant. And this is not part of it.
Correct. It's part of the treatment plant, but it's not part of that. Yeah, this is just adding 2 tanks to the existing farm out there. So this is the upgrade. This is the treatment plant. Proposals are due tomorrow. RFP are due tomorrow. So we'll probably be bringing that to the board here shortly with regards to recommendation for award of a contract to start the design process of the treatment plant. So we have money in this year's budget that will start and burn, and then we'll continue with that design into next year. And that's really what this is about, is to finish up that design next year. Loma Rica treated water treatment plant. Basically, this is to look to ways to improve the contact time out there. The way the tanks operate, is they operate together in parallel, which reduces the amount of stores that are credited for our contact time. So it could be, we're looking at ways to improve that, maybe do some plumbing to make those tanks run in series, which gives us additional credit. Also, there was some discussion about the tank, a third tank ultimately being put out there, so we'll take a look at that as well. Lower Grass Valley, this will be another Rubicon gate, so it'll be a controlled facility. We'll be able to control the flow as well as measure it through this facility for the Lower Grass Valley Canal. Starting to put those in everywhere, so we're starting to get comfort level with the Rubicon gates. They seem to be functioning well. Haven't heard anything different from Chip's group to suggest otherwise, so. Meadowbrook, again, relatively small one. It's a small pipeline that's in the backyards of folks. We now have there's an 8-inch pipeline that sits in Bell Road. We had a moratorium for a while where we can't cut into pavement, otherwise it costs us a ridiculous amount of money to try to do that. So now that we've extended that, we can go ahead and we're basically relocating a bunch of services to the front and out of the backyards, and then we'll abandon that. PLC replacement, this is at E. George as well as for the Banner Cascade pipeline. It's just placing the PLCs in the racks. This is all part of the SCADA to monitor and see how the system's operating.
I have a question about this that came up for me. So, you know, you were notified, or we were notified that they will no longer, you know, support
Yeah.
what's there, right? And what is the life cycle of those things? So we're gonna spend, you know, $200,000, put in a new thing, and then how long can we expect that to be operational and supported?
Yeah, maybe Chip knows how long that existing one's been there. Do you?
Morning, board, Chip Close. It's very random. Really, it's based upon the technology. It's just like your TV or your car or whatever. As things progress and technology improves, they abandon the old, move in with the new. I think this one's been in there at least 15-ish years. It's been quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's due, and it's very important.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of held to the company standard
So we're sort of hostage in some ways, is
in a
that?
roundabout way.
In a
I mean, we
roundabout
can
way,
shop
yeah.
for other vendors and look for, you know,
Right.
more longevity, but honestly, as the technology gets older, security becomes more vulnerable. It's better to stay up to speed and up to date on these.
Oh, I would agree. I just wondered. you
Yeah,
know,
it's a good.
15 years. Thank you for it.
Silver Way, just another PRV again. One that we're upgrading, as well as the next one, which is Smith Road. We're actually gonna relocate this one a little bit. It's over there on Smith, it's on the west side of 49. We're gonna relocate it to the east side, over to Dog Bar, where it first comes down off the hill, high pressure.
Mhm.
Summit Ridge tank replacement, this is up Cascade Shores. There's 2 of them. We'll do one this year and do one next year. These were bolted tanks. They're kind of prefab tanks that get put together. We've had nothing but trouble with them in terms of the corrosion and the maintenance requirement on it. So we're going to remove this tank and install a welded steel tank. It's not a very big facility. We'll probably be able to reuse the foundation, et cetera. You know, I think it's 107,000 gallons for this one, I think. The other one next year is 80-something thousand. So they're relatively small tanks that help feed the Cascade Shore system. And then the Tar Canal diversion. This will be a continuation. We were supposed to have our survey work done a while ago. And we've had some delays and some issues with the consultant to get that taken care of. But anyway, we've started design this year and it'll continue into next year. That'll be a process because it's in Wolf Creek. So it's going to have to get the permits. We're going to have to go through the secret process, et cetera. So that's what we'll be doing next year, doing design and all the secret stuff.
Is this going to increase the capacity of the Tar Canal?
We will, well, the canal itself is not limited by the intake from the Wolf Creek. So isn't that a fair assumption, Chip? We don't have an issue with the intake on that.
Not part of this, but how much capacity is left on the Tar Canal? Okay. Right, there's a number of people looking to increase.
And The other project that we were also working on is a big section of the canal downstream of this a little ways. We have a lot of historic leaking, et cetera, that we're gonna be doing and replacing. So we've also done the survey work for that. We'll be designing that next year as well. And then we'll spread that out because that's gonna be a pretty pricey project as well.
I didn't see the Pet Hill extension. Did that,
I know, I didn't see it either.
did that come in this area here?
Well, the Pet Hill is just, I mean, our guys are ready to go out and do that. I'd have to give you an update, Rich, on where we're at on that with regards to the property owner.
Been a year.
It's been challenging. And so we'll ultimately need to have to probably sit down with Jennifer and have a discussion about how we want to handle that moving forward. If we can't get
Can we have that
cooperation.
soon?
Sure, I can get an update from Greg and I can have a sit down with Jennifer and see where we're at.
Well, I just.
It's a
to say
small
it's
pipe. I mean, it's just a small little project. It's just,
Right, it's a small project. Do we have money from last year already allocated to it, or
I think we,
had already been absorbed in the general budget?
yeah, it wouldn't have rolled forward, but it's not a large amount because our crews would be doing the work. It's just be materials, which is relatively small. Just,
So we wouldn't have to approve it.
I'll have to have a conversation
Yeah.
offline.
it's a pretty small
You
number.
tricked me into that on the fly.
I got a good lesson last night watching the presidential debate, how to, put out those trick questions. Let's just say it in certain area, it's a high priority.
Okay.
They really want it.
We'll follow up with that and I'll get back to you. This next section, I don't know if Chip wants to handle it for his equipment.
Yeah, right.
Need new vehicles.
I don't know that we need.
It's a tiny.
Okay, so, we have what? 5 vehicles, up for replacement for next year. And I will just say that all of the trucks we're replacing are forecasted to be at 150,000 miles or more by the time these replacements come in. So that's really what the next 5 slides are all about. I'll also say that from water operations and even maintenance, we all work together to develop that list we just went through. So although it looks like all water operations is doing is vehicle replacement, we're all meeting on a regular basis to talk about all the projects. So we all have say on all of that. So
These are gas vehicles?
they're all, yeah, correct. There is one that is a 3/4 ton that we are replacing and getting it in underneath the electric vehicle requirement. So we're good there. We're allowed 1 a year. We are filling it here. That's why one is so much more expensive than the others. Thanks.
I'll skip right through those. And then Steve's got a few here, same kind of thing. I don't know if Steve, you want to mention any of the,
Why are these more expensive than the water operations?
Different size.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, different size vehicles and different setups for specific uses. But same as Chip said, good morning, Steve Prosser, Director of Maintenance. All 3 of the department heads work together. We are in complete agreement on the operations, vehicle replacement, end of life for these assets, for their needs, to be more efficient, for employee safety, upgrade of equipment, for the newer technology, for the newer safety equipment. The only thing we'd like to point out is some of the maintenance's needs. The fixed generator, the placer yard is important. It's one of our base facilities that is still operating with a portable generator. Although we're no longer really hampered with the PSPS events, we are still dealing with outages in the Auburn area with wildfire issues and other heat-related power outages. And our staff runs with pumps for our water facility there. And so to have access to the bathroom facilities and other needs, it would be nice for those staff to have a fixed generator there. Also for the iron worker, for the welders, increase efficiency, improve employee safety, and reduce our operating costs for outside vendors, so we can do more work in-house and in a safer manner for our welders. And the other two pieces of equipment that we are requesting is a mini excavator for our raw water team. It improves efficiencies, it gets able to get a smaller piece of equipment into our canal systems quicker, easier, and get the cleanup faster. And the second vacuum truck, we are seeing more and more call outs for leaks, more 2 to 3 a day sometimes, and having multiple crews having this piece of equipment out reduces costs from having to rent them. We also have an older piece of equipment that we currently use. Although it is not at end of life, it has been out of service more and more. So having that backup piece of equipment is vital for us to continue our operations and being able to be more responsive in the field.
So Steve, this is a new purchase, first time to have a second truck.
This will be the first time we have a second truck.
Just strictly for treated water lines?
We used it to clear the Squirrel Creek, not the siphon to the Lake Wildwood treatment plant that occurred about 3 months ago. It was the only piece of equipment that we could use to actually clear a complete blockage. And we also used it to assist on a ongoing project with a treatment plant filter replacement project. So it is used by both raw water and treated projects.
Anyone have any questions before we move off those items?
Thank you. Okay,
It's also part of our ongoing, as we've talked before, we do have a vehicle tracking system as well, where we go through and evaluate vehicles, not just based off of mileage, but a variety of factors before we determine they're ready for replacement.
Okay, so the next ones we'll carry with are the Fund 55, which is the hydro. There's the overall, what we're gonna be discussing. It is a little more like Jennifer mentioned, and the big one you see there is the $2 million for the new hydroelectric office in Colfax. And, with that, first one is the Bowman North upstream line improvements. This is the freeze thaw problem that we have, which starts to spall and crack and do some damage to the face. And so we're currently working on that now, and we'll be doing some additional work next year, depending on timing and how low we get the reservoir drawn.
While you're talking about Bowman, I don't see it in this, but I won't forget. We have dispersed camping up in the upper area. And over Labor Day, it was out of control.
The Forest Service manages that now.
They do. No wonder. I got reports.
Talking about the Bowman corridor?
People coming back. going,
Well,
what the hell's going on up there?
the Forest Service hasn't had the best presence up in that area.
Whose liability? Because
There's,
we own it? Don't we own that?
not that
dispersed
corridor,
area?
not between them.
No.
Mhm.
It
Dispersed camping is always challenging.
was also the series of 10 UTVs or whatever in line.
Yeah.
One trying to go faster than
Yep.
on Bowman Road. Yeah, it's fun.
Oh, were you one of them? There?
No.
Oh, I just checking.
It would have been fun. It was fun back in the day.
more dangerous.
Is this a workshop?
Yeah.
Okay, I have, the sheriff department might be involved them. They have a new ATV they're very proud of, and they were advertising that they were doing patrols up in that area. And maybe you could forward your concerns to the sheriff department and they can
Yeah,
put that in their patrols. That was supposedly what they were going after, was the illegal use of ATVs.
It is in their patrols.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just it's difficult to manage dispersed camping areas with off-road vehicles.
I'm Amanda with Sierra Harvest. I was just curious when you retire vehicles, what you do with them.
Donate them to Sierra Harvest. No.
All right, and farmers, we actually gave away some farmer trucks from a donor, so if you ever have trucks, we can
Well,
get them to a
We
farmer
sell
that
them at
needs them.
auction.
Yeah, we have a surplus policy. They get surplus also per the government code, so they do you typically go to an auction house.
Which auction house?
There's a number of different auctions.
So the farmers could buy them there.
Okay, so the next one is Chicago Park Powerhouse Rewrite, and this is one of the big capital projects that's looming on the horizon. We're really gonna be spending the bulk of the money in 28, which we have anticipated about 15 million to spend in 2028, about 2 million in 2027. And so anyway, this is just a continuation to get prepared for that. We need to deal with the transformer. The lead time on the transformers right now is almost 3 years. And so it's just getting a handle on that. The actual project itself is probably gonna be more a design build because it's gonna be a manufacturer that's also gonna be building it and putting it in. But anyway, this gets us moving forward on the transformer part of it, which we need to do anyway because of the age of it.
This is to order the transformers now.
Yeah, to get that moving forward so that we can get that in the queue so we can get it in 3 years, hopefully. Christmas tree spill, gate replacement. This is a radial gate. And it's very difficult to operate in the wintertime. Obviously, it's difficult to get to locations. A radial gate, as you know, swings from the bottom up. And so if it's not cracked very much, it's easy to plug and have issues. And then we have to try to go out there. Whereas now we're going to be replacing with the overshot gates, which hang down, which means we just set it at an elevation and we're good for the wintertime. So it makes it a lot simpler, a lot easier for our guys to deal with.
These are on Bowman Spalding.
Deer Creek excitation upgrade. We're gonna get a new excitation system. Basically, what it does is it regulates the current into the windings to make sure that it stays consistent with what needs to be outputted into the system. And we've been having trouble with this one. It's been kicking off several times, et cetera. So we need to get this replaced. And so we've started that process of doing that. We've actually, we'll be signing a contract with the designer to start that process of designing it this year, and then we'll get the equipment put in next year. This again, Deer Creek, this is just communications upgrades. Need to be able to communicate and understand what's going on out there, and this is just an upgrade to do that. And then this is the powerhouse generator switchgear, breaker and switchgear replacement. It basically saves the generator, so it doesn't get energized or overcharged from the system. The RTU replacement, this is monitoring control again for Dutch Flat. This is just an upgrade of the systems, kind of like some of the other ones. This is Dutch Flat flume repair. We're making some improvements to some of the joints out there that are cracked and leaking, et cetera, some spalling, get that taken care of so that we can continue to flow water through the flume. The 4-bay drain line repair, this is the one that comes out of the base of the dam, and it's plugged. It's not completely plugged, but it's got rocks, et cetera, in it, so we could not run camera back up in there. So we actually have to go down and dig it up, at least partially, and take a look at that to see what's going on, see if it's something relatively simple that we can take care of, or if it's something that requires a little more effort. So it's deep. It's like, I don't know, 15 or something, 18 feet deep. So we'll have to use shoring boxes and that kind of stuff. So it's a little more effort to get down there to do that. French Lake, that was on this year's schedule. Due to the Spalding concerns and issues, we didn't release water out of French. And so it was considerably higher than where we would have wanted it for the divers, because we already got limited in terms of elevations and how much downtime they can have down there. But basically, we'll be going down there, removing the rack, taking the actuator out, which is the hydraulic ram that runs the gate, and either replace or repair that. Hopefully, we can just repair that, remachine it, and get it put back in there, so that'll all get done next year.
So the pump and ram been in there for how long?
Actually, we just upgraded it, I believe. We just rebuilt it or improved the ram, the pump. And we still have trouble with being able to open and close that ram. So something's happened down there. Either the ram is leaking, which we don't necessarily, you would expect to see a lot of that. The other thing is that ram might be, it's either leaking internally, so we don't see it leaking in terms of the fluid. It may also be trying to bind up with the gate, and so it's fighting itself. It's becoming very difficult for us to operate.
Is that like a remote?
Nope, it's all
It has to go-
handwork. You go out there and, yep.
No, okay.
Yep. Then the new office there, Colfax, as you guys approved just recently, the roof, so we'll be starting on that if they haven't already mobilized. I haven't had a chance to talk to Nathan yet. And so this will be the next step, which is hiring an architect to do the internal layout of the office spaces, et cetera, and then actually constructing those. Some of the big things that we'll be doing next year. Again, this is just some additional software PLC upgrades. All these things get old, et cetera. For several of those facilities, Bowman Powerhouse, Dutch Flat 2, Chicago Park, Rollins. This is the Rollins Powerhouse Governor. We talked a little bit about that earlier today with PG&E, so we'll be replacing that governor. We've already started that process, and we'll finish that up. I think it's due to be finished in 26. This one. Again, some additional SCADA upgrades is for kind of lower end, which is Comby North and South and Scotts Flat. Then this is the penstock seismic upgrade. We actually got some designs for it. It's the penstock pipe that comes out of the bulkhead under the dam, under the reservoir there, and comes out. It needs to make some improvements to make sure it stays put should ground start shaking. Scotts Flat Spillway, you guys are all aware of that. We're gonna be spending lots of money here in a couple years. This next year is finishing up design, permits, et cetera, so that in theory, we hit the ground running in 2026.
Want to tell them the good news?
We did receive a grant,
Oh.
DOE grant,
Yeah.
which is up to $5 million.
Oh,
So hopefully we can have that as
For
part of the
modeling,
arsenal.
we got new comments from,
Yeah, you can see on the picture here, oh, Doug can explain it, but that upper plunge pool,
Mhm.
originally we were gonna keep it, and now they're requiring it to be jacked out and redesigned, so it's pretty thick.
Yeah, we were hoping to just add some anchors, do a little rehab on it, but keep that upper section, which was built later than the lower section.
they're not gonna go for that.
And the 60% comment, design comments back to them, they basically said that we need to be replacing that upper plunge pool as well, at least knocking the top 2 feet of concrete off of it, as well as doing new drains and sidewalls, et cetera. So basically replacing it.
We're still trying to have some conversations with them about it. So
Yeah. Yeah, we're hoping to set up a meeting here in the next few weeks with them.
Just like an easy come, easy go, right?
Yeah, the
is there a
upper,
timeframe on that grant money that we have to spend it in a certain block?
yeah, I don't know the details of that, so we need to, I just saw the email yesterday when I came back, so we'll have to dive
You
into
get
that.
selected, then you go through negotiations, and you get an agreement.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's
I get
20,
that, but I just
20%
wondered.
up to the 5 million. I don't know what the time frame is, but, we're continuing to move forward with the design of the lower chute.
Uh-huh.
And so in theory, we could even start that construction if we needed to while we're finishing up design on the upper chute.
It doesn't preclude us from going after more grant money.
No,
No.
we're also working on some other potential dollars, so.
Yeah.
Where was this grant money from?
Department of Energy, the 247
Federal
something grant, yeah. Mhm. Yep, which, will come with some accounting things we have to deal with, but
I'll take.
this is enough, yes. This is big enough where it'd be worth the effort. Right? So yeah, adding that upper plunge pool would add another season to our construction. and probably another $6 to $7 million worth of work. So. It will be pretty cool because there'll be a ramp down at the end now.
Even the better.
You'll be able to shoot right up into the air and into the plunge
Wow.
pool.
Or it goes zipping up in the air.
So the next one then is the South Yuba Canal, the 8.5 mile slide repair. You guys are probably aware of that. We've had some movement there. PG&E's had to deal with it a few times. And so this will be looking at ways to stabilize that bank a little better so that we don't have another washout where we lose a section of the canal.
Well, the picture on the left is the before and the one on the right is the after, or what?
Yeah, so after the last slide that we had movement, then you see the plastic over the top of that. That was through last winter to try to keep it from sliding more. And we didn't. It stayed stable this last winter. Didn't have any.
So we're,
Go ahead. You might ask the same question. What would the repair look like? I mean, what does it entail?
So we need to take a look at that. It could be a combination of things. We may be cutting the slope back more. We got a little bit of room. We can do that even on that upper bench. The other thing we may look at is whether we want to try to install some piles underneath the flume itself so that the flume stands on its own a little more and not relying on the soil underneath it. But we still need to be able to make sure that the top stuff doesn't slide down and fill it in or knock it over. So it may be a combination of things that we look at ultimately.
we're starting to look at long-term solutions.
Mhm.
Tunnel would be another option right here.
My nice dream is.
Doug, you're not gonna be here for our tunnel. If you stay, we can build a tunnel. How's that?
Yes,
We'd have to talk about that.
you could,
Everyone needs a tunnel project in there.
you haven't heard about the BEP today yet, though. You had an opportunity to say BEP earlier.
Hey, everybody needs a
So
little
Doug
break.
one upped you on the tunnel. I want to help with the tunnel.
I know, me too.
Have to say anything, but others do.
Exactly.
So the next one is just a couple items. They need a side-by-side, two-seater. Don't have anybody here specific to be able to talk about the need for those, but
I can do that. This is just a replacement of an existing vehicle. The side-by-sides are not long-lasting vehicles because it's pretty rough terrain. And
then we've got a chipper in the walk behind.
the chipper is primarily to allow for chipping of vegetation removal along the transmission lines. And then the Bobcat walk behind track loader is to aid in the maintenance of the South Yuba Canal.
Got it, okay.
Fire Safe Council is selling off a number of things.
Oh, we can look. We typically get some fairly specialized equipment, but we're not opposed to buying used equipment. It's still good.
The chippers, they have bandit chippers.
Oh, do they? Okay. Like a good sale.
Okay, so for one,
Who you talk to?
so the next couple are watershed, and assuming Greg, you'd want to.
Sure, I'll take these over. Greg Jones, Assistant General Manager. So we've got 5 projects in 2025 that we're proposing to continue to start work on and continue work on. English Meadow restoration, we're actually finishing that up this year. This is just some extra money that we believe we're going to need for some final monitoring, just some final touch-ups. But they are finishing up a majority and a proportion of everything right now. We're up there, have been for the last 4 weeks or so. So we're finishing that up, which will be really nice to be done. It's a long way away. Hazard tree fire fuels management. This is an ongoing dollar amount that just, we're just constantly having to deal with hazard trees everywhere. So this is just to continue funding for these one-off projects where we find them and have to take care of them. Selective logging is relatively similar. We're looking at the market for selling logs, and we want to make sure that we're ready to go right. We have that market going, and we have a number of opportunities and locations where we do have sellable logs that we'll be able to get in there.
Are you able to sell these beetle trees like this center picture? Isn't that a beetle tree
If you're
situation?
quick enough, if you're quick enough to get them out
okay.
of there and get them to the to the buyer, yes. But if you wait too long, they,
Or the
turn
beetle
blue.
eats too much?
What's that?
Or the beetle eats too much?
Yeah, and they turn blue and it just is sort of some artistic opportunities are there for blue trees, blue wood. But,
Blue
other
wood.
than that, it's pretty much, you gotta kind of get in there and get them out of there.
Who's buying today?
Well, I mean, SPIs typically are our go-to. They are probably pretty well stocked though with the Butte Fire,
Mhm.
campfire. We don't know yet, so. But SPI's typically been our go-to for selling in the past. Moving on, Upper Yuba Middle Watershed Forest Restoration, NEPA. This is a great project. We're looking forward to working closely with the Tahoe National Forest, U.S. Forest Service, to conduct NEPA on about 2,000 to 3,000 acres of land in and around Jackson Meadows, Milton Reservoir, Upper Bowman, that whole area. So we're doing a whole bunch of different projects in there. And as you look at a mosaic of the different lands, you can see where all these projects are sort of interlapping. And so that really extends the reach of all the fuels management that we've done in that area, not just us, but also Forest Service and also SPI. NEPA. It's all on Forest Service land. So this would be on. That's a good question.
Is it necessary? Oh, okay. Then it would-
Something to think about, Dustin. Yeah, let's talk about that. Right now, this is just to help with funding of the NEPA. Forest Service is lead because it's all on Forest Service land that we're looking at. Next one is NID specific land that we're looking at, which is in the same area. It's roughly 400 acres of doing actual tree thinning, tree removal, and fuels management. And that is grant funded as well from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. So we're very helpful for their partnership, ongoing, continuous, for many projects in and around our properties. So thanks to them.
Okay, so now we're in Fund 70, capital projects.
I can just jump into that one too. So this is Tyler ERP system, just a continuation of what we funded just a couple weeks ago. Get that jump started, and this is next year's work. So that's what this is moving forward.
We're on the move.
Okay, so now there's a couple of projects in Fund 70 that I'll chat about. The first one is the ADA transition plan. The RFP is currently out for a consultant. We'll get that back at the end of the month. I'll be bringing that to the board. They'll go through and do the evaluation, develop a schedule and a cost estimate, and then we'll start that process of annually burning, roughly 100,000 or so every year to make sure we get all our facilities up to ADA compliance. Charging stations, we're waiting for a proposal from the consultant to do some of the actual internal design work, so we can get moving forward on that. They seem to think that there's some monies available to help pay for this, which would be awesome. So we've got money sitting there. Currently, I think we had like 800 in this year's budget, which we probably will not use all that. And then we got a little bit next year. But anyway, we'll get moving forward on the actual layout and design, what we need to do for the PG&E improvements to be able to meet the ultimate charging requirements here mainly at this facility is the big one. And then see what kind of monies we can get to help offset those costs.
Hey, Doug, I see that we're doing a couple different things, but, installation of new PG&E service meters, which I know is expensive, transformers, but then we're only getting 2 electric vehicle charging stations. That seems like a lot of money for 2 charging stations, and it'd be interesting to know how that.
The grid upgrades have to be made regardless.
They do.
I understood that, but it just seems like.
Ultimately more than the 2. Let's
Mhm.
move on. This was just the initial phase.
This is just how we're phasing it. It's not to have to put all the money up front. So it'd be.
I
get
see.
this one done
Okay.
and then do more charging stations.
Okay.
The
Grid update,
Yeah, that's a big lift.
due to the charging stations, not
Yeah.
due to what we need today.
And ultimately right. And we don't
It's
have
all
many.
part of a lot of money for charging stations.
Yeah, it's a huge upfront cost just for the grid.
Yeah, it sure is.
And we don't want to build everything out all at once and we don't need it because obviously we don't even have any electric vehicles currently, so.
Right. And then could you comment for the folks that are listening that, and you do have it in the report, which I appreciate, about this is necessary to meet regulatory requirements. I mean, having charging stations is a good idea, but this amount of money is huge and we're being forced to do it. That's my understanding.
Yeah, this is based off of the big analysis that Steve and his team presented. I don't know, what was that?
I
4
remember
months
that.
ago? Yeah, related to the new car regulations, so there's.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But it's all related to emissions and type of vehicles and how many heavy duty vehicles you have.
Right. So it's a government kind of
State unfunded mandate.
state unfunded mandate,
Yes,
right?
all agencies will be systematically replacing their fleet over, what was the time period, Steve? I don't recall, 10 years?
Shorter than that.
Much shorter.
Mm-hmm. It's really.
Right now, we're under regulation that, that 50% of all new purchases of mid-size and larger vehicles, on-road vehicles, are required to be zero emission. They have a very small, minor, partial zero emission vehicles, but it's very hard to find ones that qualify for, that are CARB compliant, the California Air Resource Board compliant. But it's a one-for-one currently, that by a combustible since January 1st, 2024, your second or 50% of your purchases have to be zero emission. As of January 1st, 2027, 100% of your fleet purchases of medium to large size on-road vehicles would need to be zero emission or CARB compliant,
Mhm.
non-combustible emission vehicles.
I remember from your presentations, but I just wanted to, for the purposes of the public, is if you're a layperson, you go, oh my gosh, NID's putting 2 charging stations for $800,000. Why is that, right? So thank you. That's all that was the only point I wanted to have made.
And for full disclosure, that is, there were 2 pathways to gain compliance between the 2024 and the 2027 deadline. We picked the one that was most beneficial for the district.
Mhm.
There was another way to go. We would have by now had to have purchased about 7 CARB compliant vehicles based on the size of our fleet. Because we have such low turnover of that type of vehicle, we chose a slower path.
Mhm.
Steve, I had a question. This covers all, like, is this, the grid update for each of the 3 facilities, or just here?
On, we are looking, currently the phase 1 is our main office. At some point, and that's part of the proposal we're looking at, is how are we going to phase in our off-site locations, hydro, our placer yard, how are we going to address recreation, not only
There's a recreation too.
Mhm.
and not only in our short-term needs and our long-term needs, and also our take-home vehicles, and how we're going to have to reorganize our fleet up until 2035 if California continues the no combustible vehicle purchases after January 1, 2035 at all.
Right.
So Ricky,
Gonna be phasing.
I think you're right, that normal person looking at this would think it's a little bit of insanity.
Mhm.
So,
So I appreciate the discussion because,
so we get a break right now in our small, medium size for our ditch tenders and our
Mhm.
director levels and our maintenance workers that aren't the medium to heavy duty vehicles. But not only we're looking at this short to medium term, we're looking at our passenger vehicle issues that we're going to have in less than, in 11 years.
So what are the penalties if we just say no?
$10,000 a day per vehicle.
Well, there you go. That eats up that 800,000 pretty quick.
Heads up.
Yeah,
Well, we get to post. budget-
excuse me,
Go ahead.
I just want to make a point that trying to work with people a lot, you get much better results than trying to force them into something.
Yes, and not only, the regulations, of course, as with any of our regulations that we are dealing with, are constantly evolving, tightening language that could be considered loopholes or being tightened. So whether or not we're going to, they're reevaluating some of what we believe were advantageous loopholes for the district or smaller fleets might not be available for us in next year, the ones that were mentioned at the meeting. So we're keeping an eye on that.
My other question is, how much does this increase the average rates to our water, to our users, to our customers?
We'd have to bring that information back.
I would appreciate to see something and some kind of just napkin type.
Yeah, well, that's a talking point for rate. I was watching, it was a huge talking point. Here's a whole new government regulation costs us how much? How much is that for the?
In the next 5 years,
Yeah,
right?
next 5
Yeah,
years.
this is just a year, the 800,000.
What we can actually say for the district is, as of right now, nothing, because, and we could like to point out, is that no manufacturer to date has a vehicle on market that meets our district's needs. That is CARB compliant.
That's nice to know.
You cannot purchase one.
Especially with the elevation and the snow. It's-
Right.
Our off-road needs, the size of the vehicle, the specialty use, no one makes it.
Are we able to get an exemption from the state or?
We're,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like a snowcat?
Yeah, like a snowcat, electric snowcat.
there's one approved vendor who has a spec sheet of one that potentially could be made. And they may be taking orders in the near future, but they have not ever built that actual vehicle.
Wow.
Potentially could be made.
Eventually could be made. We have a concept of a vehicle.
Get a deposit, I'm sure.
So
Here with NID, we could patent our own and sell them.
There you go, money-making opportunity.
There you go. Mr. Engineer, let's get it going. You needed
That's a
something to do
battery
with your
engineering
retirement.
on that one.
we have a glimmer of hope. We have nobody to buy the vehicles from. And if that continues, where we can't buy any vehicles, then what?
There was documentation that you can submit to not get in trouble if you try to purchase the vehicle and it's not available.
We're on top of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, no,
bet
I
you
know,
are.
I know you are. That's why I'm asking. So, CARB is coming to Nevada County? Is it this month? Along with that new, zero emission energy group
What do you mean it's coming to?
that was just formed? It's a listening
Oh,
session.
Oh, I don't know.
I was gonna say.
So if anybody wants to go, I was on Yuba-Net, I think. And a week and a half ago, just check it out if you want to go and, give them give them your 2 bits.
Okay.
Steve, thank you.
Last one is the Grass Valley here, the ramp and the stairs, the entrance of the stairs. We got a design engineer now doing the structural. Hopefully that'll be done by the end of this year, not just into January, and then we'll construct that next spring. Both the ramp, as well as the stairs entering the building. I think that's it.
Amanda.
Now I'm wearing a different hat. This is Amanda Hickson, who's a resident of Grass Valley. And sitting in this presentation actually reminded me of something that I tried to talk to you all about last June. So this is very delayed, but related to budgets. Last June, my family and I camped in the Scotts Flat campground for a week and a half. And I was astonished, having spent a lot of my life outdoors and many campgrounds and in wild areas. I was really astonished at how the bear problem is being addressed there. There's no bear canisters. There's none of those bear lockers.
I
And
remember you saying that back sometime.
I tried emailing the whole board and then the emails bounced and I tried doing a public comment at a meeting, but I missed the comment period. So anyway, this is why still I haven't talked about it for a year and a half now. But the approach was that, and I don't know, NID employees or whoever works at the campground would drive around and empty the trash bags frequently until 11 o'clock when they then went home. And then, I mean, the bears aren't gonna care if it's 11 o'clock and no one's emptying the trash cans anymore. So I feel like it would be a very small budget line item to put bear lockers in all the NID campgrounds so that the environment and wildlife and the people using the campgrounds aren't negatively affected by the bears getting into the trash and everything at the campgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you. We got passed on. All right. So that completes the capital improvement CIP for 2025. And we'll go on to 4C. I don't see any public comment on that. Okay.
Any
Go
more
to 4C.
questions before we move on?
Well, I just have a comment, and it's really a thank you to Doug and Chip and, all of the team here, that when I was going through these, I noticed that, we have our priority score for each one of these, and I'm so appreciative of that. But I also I noted that most all of them were in the 70s and 80s, meaning, that we are staying true to the goal of really trying to prioritize these things. So I just want to thank you all for having that. A way to evaluate other than, well, it might be just a good idea to do this.
You mean the number 70, the high, the priority?
Yeah, the priority numbers. So thank you.
Score takes into account several different factors, and then that's how we rank them.
Right, right. It's great.
And if you get one in the 90s, or we
Does that mean, yeah, we don't want one in the
could have
90s,
addressed it earlier.
probably.
And sometimes things bump up due to regulatory concerns or
Mhm.
something breaks that no one.
Or something breaks. Yeah.
90s,
Doug pushes his finger through the
Squirrel
pipe,
Creek.
Squirrel Creek.
Wasn't even on our radar.
Exactly.
the 90s, they just go out and fix and talk later.
Mhm.
Things that pop up mid-year are those items that we bring forward as a separate item if it's
All hands on
desperate.
deck.
I just really appreciate it from everybody.
And
You
also
bring some
like-
order and make sense.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank Sandra and Corey. They have been amazing on getting the budget together. We are way ahead of schedule. It's super organized.
Yes.
We have our new
amazing.
software. It has budget book. It's been super awesome. And then a big thank you to Joanne. She always gets us in line for the CIP. So
Mhm.
she takes care of Doug.
So
Doug should be thanking Joanne. I'll thank Joanne on behalf of Doug Roderick. Yeah,
is that a full-time job or?
taking care of Doug. Yeah, 110% time. Yeah.
Well, some people say that of me too. I guess, thank you. So you're gonna bring this up probably next meeting?
So no, next meeting, operational budget, and then following meeting after that, we'll bring forth the fully combined budget. And we're shooting to be done in October of this year.
It's great.
For a couple of reasons. One of the big reasons is so that we have some more time this year to make some transitions and putting through all the new Fund 70 related
Mhm.
to engineering into our accounting system. So we use a budget software, and then that, we export the data from that budget software, and then that gets imported into our financial system. So it allows us to be able to get our new budget while we're also doing fiscal year end and doing the turnover, because we have new fiscal year and we gotta get all the stuff ready for audit.
Well, what a difference. Thank you all so much.
So when this comes forward, we'll hear about the Pet Hill extension.
And the tunnel.
And the tunnel, right? Oh, my
I
gosh.
mean, I can get the posse down here to, these guys. Okay, thank you. And then, I want to say is on the purchase of the pickups. Talking to a friend who works in the Sacramento-Roseville car business. Pickups get a lot cheaper as you go north. You get into Reading, they're cheaper. And people will work with you more. An example also, this side-by-side, the Polaris General, 4-seater, I think, out of Chico, they seem cheaper. And they have a huge inventory. It is stock, and I think we're losing Trevor.
will definitely check into that.
Okay? All right. Save money where we can. Okay,
For
we're
sure.
going to the FERC relicense cost and planning Yuba-Bear project.
This is just gonna be a real quick item on a status update, that was requested related to the FERC licensing project. The big underlying thing, take home, is that we have no idea when the license will be issued. That has been consistent since
2008.
2011.
Yeah.
So it is one of the more bureaucratic processes I've ever been involved with. So initial application filed by FERC, and this is related to the Yuba-Bear project, which is the FERC license that covers most of our powerhouses, but not all of them. So we amended an application in 2012, and we literally have no idea on the timeline. So recently, within the past 3 years, we submitted an additional information request that was requested by FERC. It was a huge heavy lift. It had all kinds of data in it, including economic impacts, temperature analysis on the lower Yuba River, and a couple of other operational impacts associated with delivering more water to address those temperature impacts. That was submitted, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago. We have not heard back from it. We did recently issue the CEQA notice of preparation, and that is taking into consideration the submittal of the 401 certification that we recently submitted to the Water Board. We still have ongoing litigation, but in the meanwhile, we are complying with the directives from FERC to move forward with the 401 certification process. And as well, we are initiating CEQA. So, and that's going fairly well right now. One of the big issues that we don't know and that could really kind of modify the timeline is some of the consultations with the Forest Service as well as NIMS related to the additional information reports, final ruling on the 401 certification, and then if that is ruled that the state board did not waive their rights to for certification, then does that certification modify the project scope at all? And the water board, FERC is also taking a look right now at doing a supplemental EIS, which we have not seen yet.
Supplemental EIS, environmental.
Impact statement.
Yeah. Okay. On generally or specific items?
No, on all of the, related to the additional information report, as well as some of the temperature issues, some requests from NIMS, some comments have been made. They kind of looked at the 3 projects, PG&E's hydro project, our hydro project, and Yuba's hydro project in as a whole. So there's a lot of moving parts, so just stay tuned. We don't ever know how that's going to shuffle out.
How do they take into account climate change and increasing temperatures?
Yeah, that is one of the challenges that the modeling, that was the hydrology and water supply model that was originally completed and basis for the in-stream flow requirements for the new FERC license was based off of old modeling and doesn't take into account climate change. There were some recent comments that NIMS made on some of Yuba's project related to wanting climate change modeling done. We have not received that request yet. So climate change hydrology typically identifies additional impacts, not just to the environment, but also to the water supply available for customers.
Seems like the government requires things that can't be done.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a case like this, where July was, what, 1.5 degrees higher in temperature than any other July on record?
And how receptive are they going to be to our own modeling that we just finished?
Well, it was our modeling before, so.
Okay.
Their project licenses are all fairly old. There's several different conditions, operating conditions, as well as 4E conditions. We are taking a look at some of those still, talking with resource agencies related to them. So those as well could cause a change to the project scope. And then costs. So we have spent, what, 17.9 million through August on relicensing efforts. A lot of that's been modeling, ongoing consultation, a huge long negotiation process with all of the interested stakeholders. The recent expenditures have probably, since I've been here in the last 3 years, probably been $500,000 range. But you'll start seeing some of those expenditures ramp up again as we start going through CEQA, as well as some of the water quality certification and having discussions with the resource agencies. So the total improvement cost over the next 4 years, that is an old number from 2020. I don't feel the need to update it because it would be a monumental effort at this point with not knowing what any new conditions are going to be. So we'll hold off on that. That number had to do with implementation of plans, operations. It's a huge analysis, which I don't feel is warranted or beneficial to update at this point. Implementation of the license will be lots and lots and lots of money. So we'll continue to take a look at that as we move on and kind of see where we can help mitigate some of those costs as much as possible.
How can we estimate that in the future, in the near future with a rate study? Like, that cost, we have some money saved already.
Well, it does. So we have,
Question nebulous, or,
yeah, no, it's a good question. Well, first and foremost, we don't know what the new FERC license will be issued within the next 5 years.
right.
The second item is that we do have some reserves put away for FERC specific costs. And so that would be able to help smooth out some of the higher expenditures in the first, say, 5 to 10 year period of the FERC license. Until all of this shakes out, we just don't know when it's coming.
So I guess on that subject, should we, or are we saving money annually with this, looking at this 2 to 4 million, that's gonna be new cost, right? When we finally get a license.
Well, only to the extent that you're not spending it, but to the extent that things are more expensive. So, if this cost estimate was done in 2020, there's a natural escalation factor that would be applied to it that is not shown in this number.
Right.
So, it's like you pay nothing now, pay more later, it's that scenario.
Just say no.
I guess my question is.
I mean, that would be an option. There is dismantling costs as well. At some point, we'll keep going through everything. When we get a little bit more secure on what is what and where we finally land, then, those are some conversations that we look at.
So the 119 million for capital costs, how much for campgrounds and?
It's a lot. I didn't parse it out. There's a lot for campgrounds. Some of it I think is probably, it's challenging because it's not necessary to find, the nexus doesn't have to be that great between the project and the conditions that federal agencies can place on it. Some of the campground and recreational components are, in my opinion, exceed a normal cost ratio, in especially revenue ratio per megawatt when you compare it to other agencies. Other agencies that make a whole lot more power have the same or less recreational components, while we make a lot less power. So those are some of the conversations we're having right now. There's one condition that I always find funny is there's like a 50 requirement to build a new 50-person campsite. And, as a big camper, a 50-person campsite is not needed. So some of those things, we're trying to figure it out as well.
To follow up on, Chris, I want to follow up on this because, so these are campgrounds that are required, that the Forest Service wants.
Yeah.
That they talk to FERC and they want us to pay for them.
Yes.
And Forest Service has a great track record for managing their campgrounds and dispersed campground at Bowman. And then we have to put new roads in to these places. You're trying to keep a forest pristine and natural, and yet this is counterproductive towards that. This is really opening up the forest to yahoos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it destroys the forest and the watershed that we're so hard trying to protect so we can have water quality. And this is all total counterproductive.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I don't know who's.
Well, you have to
who's
remember the
awake
U.S.
over
Forest
there.
Service, their mission is to provide recreational opportunities
Yeah, but
and
We
to
have two
protect
different missions
recreational.
that
So they are doing what
conflicting, you're right.
their mission is.
and that does not excuse them from wrecking the watershed. So Tracy, this is a workshop, so you can jump in here. I'm just saying, this is a conversation that we have to have because,
I don't think that it's a conversation we're going to resolve right here, though.
We're not.
no, we're not, but I'm just opening it up to the fact that we're gonna have it. Because, you just can't go in and destroy the watershed under the terms that we want to provide recreation for yahoos who don't play by the rules.
To answer your
My
question,
point.
your earlier question, Rich, when we came on the board and this $216 million, 150 of that was earmarked for that stuff. 150 out of that, which is, in my opinion, way,
But right now, I'm ready to say no on that. Just.
I don't think we
tell
have
you.
a
Really
choice.
give
We have no choice.
Yeah, I mean, you can decline a new license and to not operate the project.
Right.
You know, one of the things I think that people fail to understand is even without hydropower, those reservoirs don't go away. So
Mhm.
although they-
Right.
So even if we dismantled the hydropower houses, there would be some environmental conditions, but only to the extent that they can make a nexus with what we're actually doing. We would still have special use permits with the Forest Service, so they can make extractions through that. So it's a delicate conversation to have that we're gonna continue to have.
Mhm.
Then what I'm saying no to the rationality of opening up the forest to people who don't treat it well.
The dispersed camping doesn't go away either.
Dispersed camping, which is the issue, organized campgrounds that are well-maintained and operated are probably a good idea because it keeps
Mhm.
people out of the more.
When we had to go in and take over the campgrounds from the Forest Service, Monica had to work so hard to bring them up to grade. She upgraded those and really improved them. So I'm just saying, I worked for the Forest Service on campgrounds for a while, '70s, and I guess it hasn't changed much.
So, moving forward, you know, as things get more solidified and we understand more, we'll go through and update costs once we have a better handle on it. Our projected costs, we're not gonna do that until that time. And then budgetary impacts, you know, we're gonna continue to save money. We're also looking at cheaper, smarter ways to do things, how we're gonna operate the system. So we will continue to monitor this and report back to the board if we have anything new that occurs.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, thank
Any
you.
comments? All right, so we're now going to the general manager's report.
The only really fun thing I had to report was that I attended the Economic Resource Council with for Nevada County, and there was an amazing speaker there, Mr. Johansson. He did a great job. Yeah, we tag teamed it, so it was fun.
Was
Uh, Yeah, it was fun. And then we already spilled the good news. We were selected for the grant for Scotts Flat.
And don't we
want us back. I think.
have somebody for our,
Oh, and
Yes,
yes,
thank you.
we have a super exciting announcement. We have a director of power systems, and I can announce his name. His name is Peter Wade. He is going to be joining us from PG&E. He's currently in charge of a large part of their DMCT program for kind of Northern California Valley. He's going to be an amazing asset. He has hydropower experience as well as dam safety experience. Dam safety is continuously becoming more and more important and
Mhm.
complicated, so he will be a valuable asset. I think he's gonna be great with staff. He really cares about staff. So I think he's really gonna embrace a lot of the qualities that the board likes.
that's great.
And he'll be starting September 30th.
And does he live locally already?
No, he is from my neck of the woods.
Well, that, I can think of that as
Pretty
local.
local.
Yeah, Lincoln.
Yeah, local.
Yeah, you are local. You're in our service area.
We are
I mean,
part of the district.
And I know we have a direct view of Lincoln from our porch.
That's right.
Just could be better, but not so.
Okay, moving
All
on.
right, and that's all we have.
All right, so Chris?
No report.
Ricky?
Well, I've had, the usual constituent inquiries and phone calls and attending various public meetings and then answering questions, so I sort of feel like I'm always on.
Perpetual.
It is perpetual, and actually I love it, but nothing real specific.
Okay, Mine Pacific was Bad Hill Extension, but you've heard that. And it was really, I just had a great time with Jennifer at the Economic Resource Council. And I would say, Jennifer, you carried the water on that one.
Mhm.
Anyway, they, great feedback from Gil. And I think he wants us back. Yeah, so, but he also wants somebody at the seat, which
Wants us to join.
join. Yeah, that's cool. That works. Yes. I will say the Yuba-Bear project. For those who, I didn't know the man, Dick Eckenberg. He was, he just passed away. Yeah, but he was, when he retired, he was the NID project manager of the Yuba-Bear project. So he was 84, 87. Yeah. A great archer too. So, kind of what I had, although, no, I got one more thing. Divide County securing the future of ag. Amanda, you had something, you're quoted, I think, in here. Yeah, but 500,000 grant for conservation planning, and it's a 3-year project, headed up by Brianna at RCD. So, yeah. Now we need to have comments for items that will be talked about in closed session. Any comment? Okay, so the session is now closed. Thank you.